above! Holy fucking shit.
G'day, hi, and welcome. Once again, burning the midnight oil, so I gotta keep my voice down. Alright, World War III update. Looks like we're gonna have troops going back to the US troops going into Syria. Now, don't worry, there'll be no boots on the ground. I'm sure Obama told these guys to wear sandals. But there's a lot of potential problems in this. There's two things I've heard now. You can take this one with a grain of salt, but apparently there's a CIA guy out there as a whistleblower saying that they've okayed 3,000 US troops for Syria. Now, this is a problem because even though they already have like 30 to 50 forward observers or whatever you want to call them there that are, I guess, basically agents that are embedded with ISIS, and they will be embedded with the rebel groups, right, that are fighting Assad. This is the what Obama said, even though Obama said there would be no boots on the ground in Syria. But again, everything he says is always the opposite, right? It's not what he does, it's what he says. Now, the thing is the Russians, and this comes right from Vladimir Putin, saying to put US troops on the ground in Syria would be an extremely, extremely bad idea, because with a lack of coordination between the Russians and the Israelis and the Americans, obviously, potential for disaster is there. So it means what the Russians are saying is that we could hit your guys. They're going after, basically anti-Assad troops. Now, as far as, again, the U.S. arming ISIS, again, it looks like there's another group, part of al-Nusra, which is basically Al-Qaeda, joined up after being recently armed with U.S. weapons. They just recently joined up again, where basically the Russians are really striking where the anti-Assad groups are. So again, this is an openly admitted, Al-Qaeda group that's openly admitted, basically armed by the U.S. and openly joining ISIS as fighting goes on. So it's kind of interesting that what I think they're probably going to try to do here, you have to understand, the United States has to get into a war very soon, because the economy is, it isn't going to fix itself. A war is the best thing that can happen to the U.S. economy. Not for the people, but again, like World War I, World War II, same kind of idea, right? So the Russians are saying, hey, if you tell us where the moderate rebels are, because all we're finding on the ground is terrorists, we won't hit them. But the United States refuses to give them any data whatsoever on that. Now, there's another interesting thing going on with that airliner that got shot down, the Russian airliner. Now, there's a few things going on. Number one, there was a huge Israeli, U.S., and I believe Poland was in there, and maybe Spain or Greece. I don't know which military it was. Anyway, they were doing a drill within range of this this airliner, like very, very, very close to it when it went down, and they were saying that they detected a spark or something like that. So it's kind of interesting how that's playing out. But with this massive drill going on, and there were fighters in the area at the time from NATO, so I'm not saying that they shot them down or anything, but they were in that area. So while this thing got shot down, which is kind of interesting. That said, there's also Saudi Arabia out there. They have one of their ambassadors, and it's kind of, when you watch this, you can almost can't watch this with a straight face, but he's sitting there talking about how much of a dictator Assad is, and how he needs to go because it's not good for democracy of Syria, and all that kind of stuff, that he's hard on his people and everything. I'm like, this is Saudi Arabia. Last year, okay, Saudi Arabia basically broke their record for cutting people's heads off in their capital punishment. I mean, they actually cut off more heads than ISIS does. So, and here these people are out there talking about human rights. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Also, too, it looks like the Saudis are going to have a meeting with the Russians again. And the Russians have just completely ditched the US dollar and the euro. They're completely, that's it, no more business in those currencies. And they're also probably going to be working out a deal with Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, I think, is kind of have to practice a little bit of self-preservation at some point. They know that if they ditch the US dollar, which, remember, in 2012, they said by the year 2022 to 2025, they will be taking currency in other forms other than the US dollar, which means the Saudis have basically announced the death of the US dollar. as world reserve currency, or the petrodollar, right? So they're going to be probably looking for protection, but I'm thinking what they're probably doing. I'd love to be a fly on the wall between the Saudis and the Russians just to see what they're going to come up with. But I have a feeling what's probably going to happen is the Russians probably say, you guys stop backing ISIS because there's a good possibility we're going to wipe them all out anyway, and in exchange, we'll do business with you or something like that. With the oil, because it is about the oil. Now, there's also that coalition between Syria and Iran and a few other countries that are going to be basically, working out their own kind of oil pact, like their own kind of like Eurozone kind of mentality in that region, which goes against all the, Saudi and the Turkish and whatever. So with that said, it's getting really, really tense times out, because my fear is this, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the potential is there. They are going to sacrifice these U.S. soldiers, almost a guarantee. They're going to, not all of them maybe, but they are going to make sure that a few of them get killed by Russian airstrikes, almost a guarantee. The reason why is they need to get support in the U.S. to go to war with Russia, right? The best way to do it is kill a few soldiers. I think it's going to backfire. I think the soldiers kind of know what's going on. They're going to be used as cannon fodder. Basically, this is what you would call a false flag. So my fear is that they're going to sacrifice these poor U.S. soldiers to Russian air power. Now, at first, these soldiers were not supposed to go into forward combat, but now it looks like they're going to be fighting alongside the proxy groups, which is pretty much ISIS, Al-Nusra Front. So ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they're pretty much one and the same. They're working together. So that said, the Russians, again, they're not going to hold back their airstrikes in case they hit a U.S. soldier. They're not going to care. They're basically out there to kill ISIS. And if the United States government is not willing to tell them where their moderate rebels, so-called, are, then what's going to end up happening is, for sure, this increases the chances of, especially if the Americans are going to be embedded with anti-Assad forces, because Russia is defending Assad. There's no, this is pretty much openly admitted. It's, they're just, doing their spin on it, saying, well, you tell us who the moderate rebels are, which all the moderate rebels are linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The U.S. State Department can't admit this, right? So if they do, I mean, it's looking bad no matter which way they go. So the Saudis might actually, practice a little bit of self-preservation and actually ditch the U.S. dollar. Now, you'd say, yeah, but that's what got Saddam and Gaddafi killed. That's true, but if they can be backed by the Russians, and work out a deal with the Russians, then I think the Saudis see the writing on the wall. Now, how does Israel play into this? Well, Israel and the Russians have been playing tic-tac-toe with electronic radar stuff. They've been jamming each other's radar and electronic signals, that type of thing. So, although in the media it sounds like the Israelis are ecstatic that the Russians are doing their job, behind the scenes it's not so, because you have to understand the overthrow of Assad is on behalf of Israel. And the reason why these proxy groups are armed is because boots on the ground in Syria is just not another war, boots on the ground war after 13 years in Afghanistan and Iraq is, just not going to fly with the American people. To the point of, I don't think they're worried about, your typical anti-war protesters. That's not who they're worried about in the States. They're worried about a military uprising in the States, guaranteed. You have to be looking at this and saying, hey, these are really screwed up wars. Fought on behalf of resources, on behalf of bankers that want the control over this, that, and the other thing, the opium in Afghanistan, the poppy seeds and all that. And of course, or the opium, and of course all the oil in Iraq and Libya, and the gold in Libya, all that stuff. And again, Muammar Gaddafi's gold funds a lot of, because it was pretty much stolen out from underneath Gaddafi after they killed him. And the whole thing is that's paid for, God knows where that money is going to go, but a lot of that's paid for a lot of jihadist groups to get going. You are also still seeing over there in Europe the biggest human culture clash starting to unravel itself. With the Angela Merkel pretty much out there being as anti-German as she could possibly be, pretty much openly stating that Germany basically needs to embrace the demographic change that's coming, which will probably lead to a civil conflict at some point. And of course, who's behind all this promotion of the mass immigration going into Europe? And of course, called conspiracy theory until the guy admitted it. Yes, your friendly neighborhood George Soros. Again, anywhere death and destruction is, where this man goes, death and destruction follows. This man is just pure evil. And his answer was your typical Zionist communist kind of answer, that the sovereign borders of Europe are the problem. And that's not going to go over well. Now, over in Hungary, obviously, they're taking a different approach to this mass immigration thing. In Sweden, it's pretty much, again, some people, call me out on it. Some people agree with me. Some people disagree with me. I say look into it for yourself and draw your own conclusion. But the mass rape, the rapes went up something like 1,400% in Sweden with all these migrants flooding in. It's the rape capital of the Western world. Now, some people say, no, that's just racist and bigot and stuff like that. If you look at how they're actually reporting this, I mean, it's or not reporting it, it's political correctness run amok, and that's going to lead to definitely a huge, massive culture clash in Europe. And of course, this comes at a time when everybody's broke. Now, my theory is still the same. They're not bringing in these refugees to actually help them out. They're going to use them as the scapegoat to basically use it to blame the economic crash of Europe, saying, well, the migrants broke the welfare system, and they'll blame the refugees. So this way it defers the blame from the bankers, right? And that, well, at least they think it's going to work, but I don't think it's going to work. Again, if they're fighting each other, they're not fighting us. That's the Henry Kissinger kind of mentality that's out there. Now, with that said, you have a lot of crazy things going on as well with, drills here, drills there. Obviously, the Minsk 2 over there in Ukraine, null and void. It's not working. The Ukrainian military has been shelling pretty much the past couple of days nonstop and stuff like that. So that is what it is, right? Now, there's also, what the Russians have, when that airliner was shot down, over Sini, near Egypt there, Vladimir Putin actually jumped on his doomsday plane. Yeah, so something probably went on with that airliner that is a little more suspicious than normal. We'll never know what has truly happened there, like MH17 and all these things, but there does seem to be a lot of similarities that I've been noticing. It's still too early for me to make any assessment of what I think about it. I'll just have to wait and see. But the ISIS guys are out there claiming that they shot it down. Now, maybe they shot it down remotely. Maybe there's also a report out there that the pilot was worried about that airplane before takeoff, said it was in rough shape. So it could be anything. It could be just a coincidence. Who knows? But like anything, you have to keep an eye on it. But it wouldn't matter what the story is. We'd never get the truth out of the... maybe it was accidentally shot down by during the drill, thinking that it was a Russian airplane coming in. Who knows? With the electronic warfare capabilities of one enemy versus the other, you never know. They could have actually jammed the radar of that... because remember, the Russians have radar jamming capabilities too, right? They could have jammed that radar on the airliner, and then get like the Americans and the Israelis and whoever else was in on those drills to think it was a marauding Russian aircraft, and maybe they shot it down. You never know. It sounds a little hocus pocus, but it's not really when you think about it. The other thing too is in the missile drill system, something that the Russians were doing was basically right after the U.S. did their kind of Meade's test to show that they could shoot down Russian missiles. Remember, this is a response most likely to the Russians firing 26 missiles from the Caspian Sea, which pretty much all hit their targets. And even if 2 went down in Iran, the Russians didn't admit it, neither did the Iranians. But that said, 24 out of 26 or 26 out of 26, it doesn't really matter. That's a really high success rate for cruise missiles. So the Americans and a few others, basically with NATO, did their test, but however, the PAC-3 missiles weren't functioning as well as they should, and obviously the stuff they're shooting down wasn't anything like what the Russians would be throwing at us, or the Chinese. I mean, the Russians have warheads that maneuver. You know, they don't fly in a straight line, making them very hard to predict. And they were only marginally successful at shooting down some of these incoming missiles. Although they called it a successful test, several missiles missed their targets. It was usually the second and third line missiles that actually got the target. So it shows you that it's not that foolproof. No missile anti-missile system is, but it just gives you an idea. And then there's another thing with China that I just kind of recently discovered this, and it's something I completely forgot about. Or didn't consider, so to speak, not forgot about, but just didn't consider, that the Chinese, after this incursion from the U.S. going around the disputed islands, which again, if you look at the history of those islands, so the Chinese have had those islands for a long time. It's only an interest now because of, the U.S. provoking China. They really want China or Russia to strike first. They really do. So in Syria, what may happen is, the spin will be Russia purposely killed Americans, whatever. So whoever's going, God, be safe if you're one of the poor bastards that they're going to be sending to Syria. Don't worry, they'll decorate you as a hero when you're dead. But nonetheless, you're going to be used as a pawn. They're putting the U.S. soldiers in the most possible dangerous situation possible. They're not coordinating with the Russians. Ever like that, and some people would say, well, why would you coordinate with the Russians? Well, if you didn't want your guys killed on the ground, you'd coordinate with them. That type of thing. If, you were really fighting ISIS, you would be coordinating with them. But even Russia's not really fighting ISIS, they're defending Assad. So, which is understandable. They're going to the aid of their ally. And unlike the Russians, remember, the Russians are following international law. This, love them or hate them. And again, I'm not saying the Russians are the good guys. They're in there for their own interest. They're not in there for Assad. They're in there for their own interest. It all comes down to gas and oil and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they have international approval, meaning they went through the front door. They got invited in by Assad. The United States hasn't. So the wars, basically by international law, these are illegal wars that the United States is engaged in Libya and in Syria. They're not really allowed to be in there. They weren't invited. And that's international law. Now, getting back to China, what I meant to say was that after this incursion about a week or so ago, going into the disputed waters with the U.S. Navy. Now, nothing happened, which is good, but it's still definitely provoking. And the Chinese have said, yes, we don't want war with the Americans, but we're not afraid to go there. But there's a huge thing. It's not even so much the Chinese Navy you have to worry about, or even the land-based mobile cruise missiles and anti-shipping missiles. They have about 100,000 sea mines. So you have to understand, modern-day sea mines are not like World War II. World War II, a sea mine, you bumped into it, it went boom. So that was a World War II style. Modern-day sea mines you can put under the ocean, and they're very, very, very powerful. There's no ship on the planet that can take out these, withstand a hit from these sea mines. They will sink a ship almost instantaneously. Now, the thing about them is that these sea mines can be directed or triggered by ship engine noises, meaning the displacement of a warship. It can record the noise, okay, and usually the submarines can do this. It can record the noise, and then once it records the noise, it can put it into like a pattern recognition thing and store it in its memory. Now, that means a huge freighter can go right over top of this sea mine and nothing will happen. A speedboat will go over this sea mine, nothing will happen. Heck, a rowboat will go over this sea mine, nothing will happen. But as soon as an enemy warship goes over this thing, or an enemy submarine goes near this thing, boom, and it's game over. There's another problem too. Also, still getting back to the thing about the underwater fiber optic internet lines that is all over the news, that they're worried about the Russians cutting these lines. These are also communication lines big time. But they're also worried about the United States provoking a Chinese ballistic subs, because their ballistic subs are not much bigger than their attack subs, and they can be mistaken. So again, this puts us at another potential danger. Not saying it's going to happen. I know some people think I fearmonger, but I'm just trying to keep it real. We are living in intense times. There's no doubt about that. But the Chinese are very aware of that they're being provoked. Of course, the cyber attack stuff is in full swing on both sides. No doubt about that. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with the boots on the ground, or sorry, sandals on the ground by Obama. But one CIA guy was again saying that the not the Pentagon, but well, I guess it would be the Pentagon, said yeah, they were going to okay up to 3,000 U.S. troops to go to Syria. Now, that said, doesn't mean all 3,000 will be killed by Russian air power, but I can guarantee you they're going to sacrifice a few. So out of the 50 that are going, or technically already there, the difference now is that instead of staying back, near the Turkish border, they're going to be moving in with ISIS and the Islamic State, and as well as, I guess, Al-Nusra Front, which is, Al-Qaeda, as well as the Free Syrian Army, which nobody can seem to find. And the new name for ISIS now, I believe, is the Arab Democracy League or something like that. It's really ridiculous. They just keep changing the name, so people don't know what they are, right? So, with that said, we'll have to see how the Israelis play this one out. Again, they've been playing cat and mouse with the Russians on the electronic warfare side of things. So I don't think the Israelis can really successfully get into Syria to do strikes against Assad's forces. Russian air power is there. I think it's there to stay until it gets the job done. That said, the Russians have flown over 1,068, don't quote me on the exact number, but under 1,100 anyway, but between 1,000 and 1,100 sorties since this ordeal began. They've wiped out over 50 jihadist base, ISIS command posts. They're just completely decimating the area. Apparently they've killed about 178 civilians, 270 jihadists. I can't see them killing that few, because now, mind you, that's probably just with the air power. If you factor in, how they're doing it, like I said a couple of months ago, when the Russians get in there, they'll get at one end of the country and just sweep the whole country. And that seems to be they're using Hezbollah from Lebanon, they're using Hezbollah from Iran, and then of course the Iranians and the Lebanese army, they're in there, and of course the Syrian army, and they're basically dropping some pretty powerful bombs as air cover, and then of course the sweep up on the ground is the Syrian forces. And it looks like the Russians are upping their bombing weights from the 500-pound FABs to the 1,500-pounders, which are pretty powerful weapons. They're like the equivalent to JDAMs that the Americans have and NATO has. So that's pretty much what I got for this one. We'll have to wait and see how this all plays out, but again, if you're a U.S. troop and you're going to be sent there, I can imagine if it's 50 guys, it's probably going to be special ops guys, people that, it's just the idea that they're going to most likely be used to, I wouldn't say kick off the war, but they need to build support against by the American people to go to war with the Russians. They need to build that support. They need to get people on board with the idea, because people aren't on board with the idea of going to Syria. They're not on board with the idea of overthrowing Assad, even that type of thing. So we'll have to wait to see how this plays out, but I think we are living in some pretty intense times. And again, if you're one of these poor soldiers, again, don't worry, they're going to decorate your coffin very well, but you're basically being slated to be killed. You put in the most dangerous situation possible. And if you've been watching any of the footage of the Russian air power, it's pretty precise. They've been hitting a lot of stuff. Again, they've been using quite big bombs. So, the day of the barrel bomb, the barrel bomb terror is over in Syria. It's now 500-pound and 1,500-pound guided bombs, right? So, and some free fall bombs too. So, I guess I'll leave it at that. This is going to be a bit of a short one. So, if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation down below, links down below. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. If you want to check out my WW3 Updates Facebook page, you can go there, post links and stuff like that. And thank you guys for all your links. There's also Twitter. It's not wrench me. I only post the video there. I don't really do any tweeting or anything like that, so I don't really follow Twitter at all, because just I don't. But I put it out there just, to help wake people up. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. If I think I already said that. Be true to yourselves, be true to others. Always, always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day, eh?
Oh. One more? That's it. We're choking you up, Bob. Holy fucking shit.
G'day, hi, and welcome. Once again, burning the midnight oil, so I gotta keep my voice down. Alright, World War III update. Looks like we're going to have troops going back to the US troops going into Syria. Now, don't worry, there'll be no boots on the ground. I'm sure Obama told these guys to wear sandals. But there's a lot of potential problems in this. There's two things I've heard now. You can take this one with a grain of salt, but apparently there's a CIA guy out there as a whistleblower saying that they've okayed 3,000 US troops for Syria. Now, this is a problem because even though they already have like 30 to 50 forward observers or whatever you want to call them there that are, I guess, basically agents that are embedded with ISIS, and they will be embedded with the rebel groups, right, that are fighting Assad. This is the what Obama said, even though Obama said there would be no boots on the ground in Syria. But again, everything he says is always the opposite, right? It's not what he does, it's what he says. Now, the thing is the Russians, and this comes right from Vladimir Putin, saying to put U.S. troops on the ground in Syria would be an extremely, extremely bad idea, because with the lack of coordination between the Russians and the Israelis and the Americans, obviously, potential for disaster is there. So it means what the Russians are saying is that we could hit your guys. They're going after, basically anti-Assad troops. Now, as far as, again, the U.S. arming ISIS. Again, it looks like there's another group, part of al-Nusra, which is basically Al-Qaeda, joined up after being recently armed with U.S. weapons. They just recently joined up again, where basically the Russians are really striking where the anti-Assad groups are. So again, this is an openly admitted, Al-Qaeda group that's openly admitted, basically armed by the U.S. and openly joining ISIS as fighting goes on. So it's kind of interesting that what I think they're probably going to try to do here, you have to understand, the United States has to get into a war very soon, because the economy is, it isn't going to fix itself. A war is the best thing that could happen to the U.S. economy. Not for the people, but again, like World War I, World War II, same kind of idea, right? So the Russians are saying, hey, if you tell us where the moderate rebels are, because all we're fighting on the ground is terrorists, we won't hit them. But the United States refuses to give them any data whatsoever on that. Now, there's another interesting thing going on with that airliner that got shot down, the Russian airliner. Now, there's a few things going on. Number one, there was a huge Israeli, U.S., and I believe Poland was in there, and maybe Spain or Greece. I don't know which military it was. Anyway, they were doing a drill within range of this this airliner, like very, very, very close to it when it went down, and they were saying that they detected a spark or something like that. So it's kind of interesting how that's playing out. But with this massive drill going on, and there were fighters in the area at the time from